They'd called him mute, not broken. For 5 long years, no one had heard a sound from the old shepherd mix with the smoke-gray coat and cloudy left eye, not even a whimper. Not when he was struck by a falling fence post during the winter storm. Not when he was tied outside the clinic, half-starved and riddled with ticks, his collar chewed to threads. Not even when they stitched him up, bathed him, and gave him a name Ash. So when the bark came, sharp and sudden, it shattered the quiet like a bone snapping in the dark. Liam, he's barking. Ash is barking. Marta stumbled backward from the hearth, nearly knocking over the iron poker she'd set against the brick. Her hands, still dusted in soot from cleaning the old stone crevice, trembled as the dog growled a Gengatoro, urgent. Unlike anything they'd heard from him before, Ash's body was rigid, his front paw extended toward the low space under the hearthstone ledge. His fur bristled, tail stiff, ears pinned flat. His bark wasn't warning, it was pleading. Liam hurried in from the hallway, towel still slung over his shoulder from bathing the baby upstairs. What happened, Marta? She didn't answer right away. She was staring down at something in her hand, something she'd pulled from beneath the soot-streaked ash pile where the hearth hadn't been lit in months. It was small, damped from the earth and smeared with something dark. At first she thought it was an old rag, one of the dozens used to wipe spills or boot tracks, but a WASN single quotes T.I tiny, worn thin, pale pink with a line of embroidery stitched in blue. June 1st. Liam saw it too. He froze. His breath caught somewhere between a gasp and a denial. That's not hers, is it? Marta didn't answer. Her fingers clenched tighter around the fabric as Ash let out a low, rumbling snarl, digging now with frantic paws at the corner of the hearth spaceboard. No one's been in this house since Liam stopped, turning slowly toward his wife, then toward the dog again. You told me the realtor said this place was empty. No squatters, no animals, nothing. I checked everything. Marta's voice was barely above a whisper. Attic basement. The well, you saw how clean it was when we moved in. The hearthstones groaned faintly as Ash shoved his snout deeper under the brick ledge. His nose came out black with soot, but he was trembling now, whining like something was calling to him from just beyond reach. Something familiar. Liam knelt beside him, brushing away years of ash and grit until his fingertips met cold wood. A small, narrow plank had been fitted into the wall. Not stone like the rest, hidden but not sealed. There was space around the edges, just enough for air, just enough for a sound to pass through. He reached for the poker, slid it under the lip of the panel, and pried it popped free with a soft groan. A gust of stale, sour air hit them first. Mildew, damp soil, something older beneath. Ash pressed forward instantly, paws dragging against the wood floor as he tried to crawl into the space. Liam had to hold him back. Inside, there was only dirt packed tight and buried beneath a thin layer, just visible in the flickering light. From the nearby lamp were more scraps of pink fabric, a second sock, a piece of ribbon, the edge of something plush and pale, perhaps a toy rabbit, its ear torn at the seam. Why would someone bury this here? Marta asked, voice cracking now, more afraid of the answer than the question itself. Ash barked again. This time it wasn't pain or desperation, it was memory. Because Ash knew. Whatever had been buried in the shadows of that old fireplace, he'd seen it before. Not just the sock or the toy or the dog. He had smelled that place, felt the weight of it long before they ever turned the key to this house. And now, something had shaken it loose. Marta rose slowly, her breath fogging the cold glass of the window as she looked outside into the woods, where twilight sank heavy over the treetops. She realized she hadn't heard a single bird call in over an hour. No owls, no wind. The silence was waiting, and Ash had just broken it. They thought the hearth was empty, but something had been sleeping under the ash all along. Something that recognized a child's scent, and perhaps something that wasn't finished. The silence in the house didn't lift, even with Ash growling low at the hearth's edge and Liam's pulse pounding in his ears. It felt as though the very walls were holding their breath. Marta crouched again, reaching slowly toward the newly opened gap beneath the hearthstone. Her fingers trembled, hesitated just above the dirt, as if something beneath might reach back. Liam stopped her. Don't. His voice was firm, but his eyes betrayed him, wide and wild, caught between disbelief and dawning dread. He looked down at the buried sock still clutched in Marta's hand, and then at their baby monitor on the side table. Silent, the green light steady. Go check on her, he said. Please. Marta didn't argue. She turned and took the stairs 2 at a time, heart pounding so loud she could barely hear her own footsteps. When she reached the nursery, the soft glow of the nightlight painted everything in calm blues and creams. The mobile still spun gently above the crib, casting slow shadows across the wall. Their daughter was asleep, breathing, peaceful, unaware. But Marta stayed by her side for a long moment, one hand resting on the crib rail, the other pressing the sock tied to her chest. Downstairs, Liam pulled the panel open wider. Ash pressed in beside him, sniffing furiously now, pawing at the earth like he was trying to unbury something already dead. Liam took a breath, then reached into the space again, digging carefully until he found a small wooden box, no bigger than a bread loaf. The hinges were rusted, the top warped by damp and time. He pulled it free. The moment the box touched the air, Ash let out a sound Liam had never heard before, wine threaded with something deeper. Almost like mourning. Liam didn't open the box. Not yet. He just sat there, gripping it in both hands, staring into the space behind the hearth, that narrow darkness, that strange, hidden place. He didn't notice Marta return until she spoke. "She's fine, still asleep." He nodded but didn't move. Then, finally, he opened the box. Inside, folded neatly but stained and brittle with age, were a collection of things that shouldn't have been kept. Another pair of infant socks, faded blue this time. A pacifier, cracked and yellowing. A hospital wristband with a worn-out name that looked like Sophie, and under it all, tucked flat beneath the clutter, was a photograph. Marta leaned in to look. It was a man, unsmiling, holding a baby wrapped in a pale blanket. The man looked tired, not tired like a new father, tired like someone who hadn't slept in years. His eyes were sunken, face drawn, expression empty. But it wasn't the man that caught Marta's attention. It was the room behind him, the fireplace, the stonework, the worn wooden mantel. It was this house. Liam flipped the photograph over. Scrawled in faded pencil were the words, "June 1st. I didn't know what else to do." He set the photo down slowly, like it might burn through his hands. "Someone lived here before," he said quietly, "and they lost a child." Or, he didn't finish the thought. Ash was still pacing now, nose pressed to the floorboards, following something neither of them could see. His body moved like he was being led not by scent alone, but by memory, by grief. Marta's voice had gone hollow. He looked up. There was something else under the crib. "What?" She held out her hand, a tiny hairclip shaped like a butterfly, pink enamel chipped at the wings. "It wasn't there this morning. I swear to God I would have seen it." Liam stood quickly. "Maybe we should go," but neither of them moved. The house was heavy with silence again, the kind that settles behind the bones. Outside, a wind had picked up, stirring the tall grass, scratching against the windows like fingers. Marta went to the window and pushed the curtain aside. The woods loomed at the edge of the property, dark and still. She squinted. "There's someone out there." Liam joined her, squinting past the glass. At first he saw nothing, but then between two trees, just beyond the reach of the porch light, was a faint shape. Not quite a person, not quite a shadow. Just there, and gone again. He reached for his phone, but there was no signal. Of course, there hadn't been any for hours. Ash barked once, sharp and piercing. Then he bolted from the hearth and ran toward the nursery. Marta screamed. By the time they reached the baby's room, Ash was already inside, standing rigid beside the crib, head cocked. His ears were pricked toward the ceiling. The attic. Liam moved first, wrenching open the attic hatch in the hallway, to ceiling, pulling down the old wooden ladder that unfolded with a dry groan. Cold air spilled down over him, like a cellar in the dead of winter. He climbed. Each step creaked like a warning, the boards above groaning under his weight. When his head rose past the floor of the attic, he paused. Dust, cobwebs, a few forgotten boxes, the usual things. But there, in the corner farthest from the lights, something new, a small, hand-built crib, rocking gently. Empty. And beside it, another box identical to the one under the hearth. He didn't touch it. "Not yet, Liam." Marta called softly from below. He turned slowly, heart thunderous in his chest. "There's more." He didn't need to say what. She already knew. Something had been waiting in this house, not haunting, not tormenting, but remembering, holding on. And now that the silence was broken, it wasn't going to let go quietly. The attic didn't smell like dust or mildew. It smelled like soil, freshly turned earth. Even though the wooden planks beneath Liam's knees were dry and gray with age, the smell shouldn't have been there, but it clung to him, seeped into his breath, his skin, his thoughts. He stayed kneeling beside the second box, afraid to lift the lid, afraid of what might come rushing back if he did below him. Marta waited in silence, holding their daughter tight in her arms. Ash had taken up post at the base of the attic ladder, his head tilted again toward the ceiling, ears twitching. It was as if the dog could hear something they couldn't, as if something had spoken, and he was the only one left who remembered the language. Liam took a breath and opened the box. This one was worse. Inside was a baby blanket, neatly folded, but soaked through in places where mildew had bloomed and died. Beneath it lay a photograph, face down. He didn't want to look, but his fingers moved on their own. He flipped it over. A woman this time, early 30s maybe. Hollow eyes, clutching a child to her chest, in the same room, the same house, in front of the same hearth. But the woman looked lost, not sad, not grieving, gone, like something had been taken from her that no one could see behind her. Just barely visible in the frame was the man from the earlier photo. But now his expression had changed, worse than before. Not grief, not despair, guilt. Liam's chest tightened. He heard the floor creak behind him. He turned, startled. Nothing there. But the rocking crib in the corner had stopped moving. He stood slowly, backing away. A breeze passed overhead, soft as breath, cold. He climbed back down the ladder without a word. Marta looked up and her face changed the moment she saw him. "What did you find?" He shook his head, voice barely audible. "They were here." This was their house. That was their baby. She clutched their daughter tighter. Ash let out a soft growl, not at them, but at the hallway beyond. His body stiffened. Liam turned and saw it too. The door to the nursery had closed. He was sure it had been open. He pushed it gently. It creaked wide again, and nothing looked out of place. But on the mobile above the crib, the little cloud-shaped pendants was spinning. Fast. Faster than any draft could explain. Then the monitor buzzed, not loud. Just a single flicker of static, the kind that comes before a sound that never arrives. Liam stared at the green light as it pulsed once, then held steady again. Marta moved toward him. "We have to leave." He didn't argue. For once, instinct won out over reason. They grabbed what they could: blankets, bottles, jackets thrown over shoulders. Ash stood ready at the door, already anticipating the escape. But the moment they opened the front door, they saw it. Footprints, small ones too, small to be adult, leading from the edge of the porch steps down into the grass and out toward the tree line. Bare feet, deep enough to suggest movement. Recent. Marta's breath hitched. Those weren't there before. Liam reached for her arm. "Get in the car." The air outside was colder now than it had been all day, and not the kind of cold that came with weather, the kind that felt watched. They climbed into the car, buckled their daughter in, and slammed the doors. Liam turned the key. Nothing. Not even a click. He tried again. Still nothing. Ash began to bark inside the house. One sharp burst, then another, then silence. Liam turned to the porch. The front door had closed behind them. Then the porch light flickered. Once, twice, out. Ash barked again, louder now, from behind the door. "He's in there," Marta said, reaching for the handle. But Liam grabbed her wrist. "No, we're not going back in. He's trying to tell us something. He's trying to warn us." A sudden noise cut through the tension like a blade glass shattering. Upstairs. Liam was already halfway out of the car. He didn't stop to think. The instinct was too deep. He couldn't leave Ash, couldn't leave him barking into the dark, while whatever haunted this house moved freely upstairs. The second he crossed the threshold, the smell hit him again. That same sour-sweet rot of soil and something older. Ash stood at the foot of the stairs, now unmoving. Looking up. Liam followed his gaze. On the landing, just beyond the edge of the hallway light, stood a figure, not an adult, not a child, something in between. It didn't move. Liam's mouth went dry. His legs refused to step forward. Then the figure turned. And vanished down the hall. He followed, not because he wanted to, but because some part of him had to. Like his feet belonged to a memory that wasn't his. Like he'd been pulled into a reenactment he didn't consent to. The hallway stretched, longer than it should have. The walls narrowing as he moved, the light dimming with every step. At the end was the nursery door closed. He reached for the knob. Ash barked behind him, a final broken plea. Liam opened the door. The room was empty, perfectly, eerily still, except for one thing. On the floor beneath the crib, where there had been nothing before, was a third box, not old, not stained. New. And on top of it, resting gently as if placed by unseen hands, was the baby's sock Marta had carried upstairs only hours before. The one with June 1st stitched in blue. But this time there was something else, a second line of stitching, faint and fresh, added beneath it, in crooked thread. "She still cries." Liam didn't touch the box. He just stared at it, this new thing in an old room, impossibly placed, impossibly aware. The soft stitching on the sock held his gaze like a pair of eyes. She still cries. Not a warning, not a plea, a statement, cold, observant, the kind that settles in the stomach and starts to rot from the inside out. Behind him, the hallway creaked with returning footsteps. Ash. The old dog nosed into the nursery, slower now, his ears flat and tail low. No barking this time, just a soft, anxious whine. Liam knelt and placed a hand on his back. The dog was shaking. A gust of wind passed through the room, but the window was closed. Then the baby monitor, still clipped to Liam's belt, crackled to life again, this time with a soft, rhythmic sound, like shallow breaths or quiet sobs. But they weren't coming from the nursery. They were coming from the attic. Marta was still outside with the baby. She hadn't heard it. Liam moved slowly. His limbs felt heavy now, as though something in the air resisted him. The box remained untouched beneath the crib, but Ash followed closely as he left the room, as if unwilling to let him walk back into the house's memory alone. The ladder creaked under Liam's weight as he climbed once more into the attic. The rocking crib in the corner hadn't moved since earlier, but now a shape sat in its shadow, small, still barely visible against the wall. It didn't breathe, it didn't blink. It waited. He stepped toward it, heart hammering until he could make out the contours. A dull ragged home stitched its arms limp over the edge of the crib. The face was sewn with uneven black thread, a wide, smiling mouth, too wide, the kind a child might make when imitating joy they didn't understand. Beside the doll, wedged into the slats of the crib, was a photo. This one hadn't aged. It looked new. The ink was fresh, the edges sharp, but the content. Liam saw his own reflection. Him, Marta, their daughter, the three of them standing in front of this very house, keys in hand. Except they hadn't taken this photo. It hadn't been posed. It hadn't even happened. They'd arrived late in The evening, tired, distracted, hauling boxes. This photo showed something else. Smiles, direct eye contact. The child not in her mother's arms, but standing on her own feet. Older. Liam staggered back, a cold sweat prickling his spine. He looked again at the crib. The doll was gone. A sharp sound cracked the silence. Downstairs, a door slamming. He rushed back to the ladder, heart in his throat. Ash barked at the bottom, frantic, circling the floor. Marta's voice followed next, sharp and panicked from outside. "Liam, where's the baby?" The words ripped through him. He flew down the ladder and ran, Ash at his heels, claws slipping. On the floorboards, the front door was wide open, wind howling in from the porch. Marta stood at the base of the steps, baby carrier in her hands. Empty. She was shaking. She was right here, right here. I didn't take my eyes off Liam's. Body moved before thought could form. He bolted past her out into the yard, eyes scanning the grass, the tree line, the porch, the dash, their a trail. Tiny footprints in the dirt again, but these were deeper, fresher, leading away from the steps, no wider than a child's foot, no longer than a bottle. They trailed off toward the woods. He sprinted, shouting her name, the sound of it ragged in his throat. "Ava." No answer. Ash tore ahead, barking into the dark, cutting through the tall grass like he knew exactly where she'd gone. Liam followed blindly, crashing through underbrush, branches clawing at his face, thorns catching his arms. The thrown woods pressed in from all sides, thick and ancient, trees too close, roots shifting underfoot like something watching. The trail veered left, down into a gully. Ash stopped at the edge, tail high, barking at something just out of sight. Liam slid down the incline, his knees catching on rock and soil. He saw the clearing before he felt it, the way the air thinned, the way sound dropped out like a curtain falling. And there she was, Ava, standing in the center of the clearing, not crying, not lost, just still, as though listening to something Liam couldn't hear. He rushed to her, scooping her into his arms, whispering nonsense and apologies and her name over and over again. But she didn't move, didn't flinch. Her body was warm, but her eyes were fixed on something behind him. Liam turned. Nothing. Just trees, except between two trunks, almost impossible to make out, stood a shadowed figure, the size of a child, watching. Then it stepped back and disappeared. Liam ran back through the woods, through brambles and vines and roots, back to the yard, the porch, the house. Ash followed, close behind. Marta was waiting, wild with relief and terror, tears streaking her cheeks. She took Ava and cradled her, checking her breath, her pulse, everything. "She's okay," she whispered. "She's okay." But Liam knew better. Ava hadn't cried, not once, not out there, not when taken, not when found. And as the front door closed behind them, sealing them again inside that house that watched and remembered, the silence returned, complete. Liam turned toward the hearth. The box was gone, and in its place, laid carefully across the stones where fire had once lived, was the rag doll from the attic. Its stitched smile now pulled open at the seams. As if it had screamed morning, didn't feel like morning. Light came through the windows, yes, soft and golden, but it touched nothing. It didn't warm the house or lift the weight that had settled in every corner. The air was thin, still, as if the house itself was unsure whether to exhale. Marta stood in the nursery, holding Ava close, eyes fixed on the crib as if expecting it to move again. She hadn't slept, neither had Liam. They took turns keeping watch, though from what neither of them could say, there had been no more footsteps, no more static on the monitor, no new boxes, just silence. And the doll. It sat, now on the hearth, exactly where they'd found it the night before, propped up, arms spread wide like a child asking to be held. But the smile ripped open as if something inside had finally torn loose, made Liam feel sick every time he passed it. He hadn't touched it, didn't need to. It wasn't there to be touched. It was there to be seen. A reminder, a mark. The way a gravestone doesn't need to explain the death, it simply proves it happened. Ash hadn't left the nursery doorway all night. He watched Ava like a sentry, eyes never blinking, ears twitching with every creak of wood. He no longer barked, no longer growled. The silence had claimed him again, but now it felt different. Not mute, guarded. The kind of silence that comes after a vow. Liam sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photographs they'd pulled from the hearth and attic. Faces of strangers that now felt closer than family. The man, hollowed out by guilt. The woman, cradling a child in the same nursery where Marta now rocked Ava. The handwriting, the stitched messages, the footsteps, the impossible photos. Each thread twisted tighter than the last. And still, he couldn't answer the one question that mattered most. Why us? Marta appeared in the doorway, hair unwashed, face pale. "We can't live here," he nodded. "I know. There's something here that doesn't want to hurt her, but it wants her." Liam looked up. "You saw it too." Marta didn't blink. She smiled in her sleep last night. "That's never happened. Not once." The air shifted slightly, just enough to make the curtains stir. Marta flinched. Liam rose. "There's one thing left," he said. She didn't ask what they both knew. Together, they returned to the attic. The ladder groaned under their weight, the boards sighed, but no new shadows waited, no breath on the air, just the empty crib in the corner, and the dull-sized indent it had left behind. The second box still sat nearby, untouched since Liam had opened it. He knelt and carefully lifted it, cradling it like something fragile. Marta followed him back, down, and Ash moved aside only once Ava was safely in her mother's arms. At the hearth, Liam placed the second box beside the first. The photograph from the attic to one that shouldn't exist he placed atop them both. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He spoke aloud, not to Marta, not to the house, to them. "I don't know your names," he began, voice steady despite the weight behind it, "and I don't know what happened here, but I think you were trying to keep something from being forgotten. Maybe you thought someone would listen, someone would see, and maybe we weren't the first. Maybe we're just the first who stayed." Marta tightened her hold on Ava. Liam swallowed, letting the silence settle again. "She's not yours. She's not here to fix what went wrong. Whatever happened to your baby, I can't undo it, but you have to let her go." No response, no wind, no movement. Then Ash stood, slow, deliberate. He patted forward and placed himself between the hearth and Ava, his head bowed low, his chest rising and falling with a quiet strength. And for the first time since the night he'd been left at the clinic, Ash made a sound that wasn't a bark, a howl. Soft, deep, wounded, like it had come from somewhere far beneath the ribs. It carried through the beams and floorboards, through the walls and attic and cellar, and when it faded, it left behind something Liam hadn't expected. Stillness, the kind of stillness that feels finished. Ash turned then, limped slowly to Ava, and laid down beside her. Bassinet. And the doll, the one on the hearth, was gone. No trace, no thread, just the faintest ash print where it had been, as if it had simply left. Liam and Marta didn't speak. They didn't pack. They just sat on the floor beside their daughter, backs against the wall, holding each other as morning bloomed. Through the windows, for real this time. Not a false dawn, not a dead light, but warmth. That night Ava laughed in her sleep. Marta wept quietly beside her crib. Ash didn't bark, he just watched. And for the first time in 5 years his ears relaxed. They moved out 3 days later, left behind nothing but a thank you note taped to the hearth. No one ever answered it, but the next family who moved in never heard a sound, never found a box, never saw a doll. But they did keep a photo in the living room of the couple who lived there before, smiling, content, and the little girl standing between them, older now, standing on her own, her name stitched faintly on her sock, Ava. And beneath it, one last line: "She no longer cries."